Greetings, this is the Questing GM. So this is RPGADay 2020, day number 10. And the word of the day is want. Okay, so want is a really big word. It's a very broad subject. For this video, I'm going to be talking about broad strokes about wants, that at least what I've thought about wants in role-playing games. So the first thing I think I will start with, and in my experience of wants, there are different stages of wants I went through, and the first one that I want from role-playing games was I want to play a role-playing game. I want to play the game. I want to play a game with somebody, and I'm more than happy to grab anybody to play the game with me. That was the most basic one that I wanted. As I played with more and more people, and more games, more and more systems, more and more groups, the one slightly changes. It becomes I want to play a game, but, and eventually you'll find out that not everybody has the same wants as you or as myself. Everybody wants something from a role-playing game, but everyone has different wants. It can be system, what rules are we using, what game are we playing, like just the actual book itself, the actual rules itself. It can be style. We are playing Dungeons and Dragons, but is it going to be hack and slash? Is it going to be more immersive? Is it something light? Is it something more complicated? It can be tone. Are we going for something humorous, lighthearted, easygoing, no stress? Or are we going for something grim, dark, mature? It can be genre, and that may be predicated on what system you're playing. But are we looking at D&D Eberron with its pulpy action adventure, or are we looking at Forgotten Realms High Magic, or are we looking at Dragonlance considerably low magic, or maybe something a bit more grimmer in terms of what's happening to the world, at least in early Dragonlance. Dark Sun has a different tone of your standard D&D. And then we have basically how do we use the rules. There may be certain rules of the system that we are using, that we play with, that we may not be inclined with. It's not our preference, and we prefer to use the rules in a different way. How we interpret the rules in a different way. There may be different kinds of challenges that we want. Something more puzzle heavy, something more combat heavy, something more social based, some more diplomatic. And then coincidentally, even something as simple as how do we want to be treated, or the treatments that we give to other players. And even just the people themselves, like what kind of people do we want to play with, can be a different kind of want that can be important to you. So how did I learn to settle with wants? If everyone has different wants, what was the right way to go about it? And this is actually something that brought me to, in one of my early days of learning how to be trying to be a better game master, is the book by Robin D. Laws, the most famous Robin D. Laws Rules of Game Mastering. In Robin D. Laws Rules of Game Mastering, in one of the early chapters, you will find that Robin D. Laws talks about this idea of different players having different wants. And if you are in one of the good laws of game mastering is knowing those wants, identifying those wants, and then catering to them. If the player who is playing the barbarian, and maybe there's a reason why he's playing the barbarian, is telling you that he wants to have more combat, give them more combat. If another player wants a bit more puzzles, then give them the puzzles, give them the challenge that they wanted. It was sort of implied that the job or the signs of a great GM is someone who is able to be a generous host, to be able to cater for the different wants of the players. And this was like a revolutionary idea, back in the days when I first read it. Like, wow, this was a ticket, that it was not really about my game, it was actually about the players' games, and knowing their wants, and I should be proud if I could be able to appeal or cater to those wants, and that was actually, you know, a badge of honor to wear, that I am a great GM. It was, conversely, if you were not able to give what the players wanted, that's a sign that you are a bad GM. And this is where I'm going to have a very honest and maybe controversial take, but it's my honest opinion and experience is that that's terrible advice. It's terrible advice to give players everything they want, and partly because there is different wants, and if a GM is sort of tying himself to giving everything that the player wants, it can come at a cost. It can come at a cost, most often to the GM, but can also be at the cost of other wants of the players. Let's just give a very maybe flawed or very simple example, but I think you get the point of what I'm trying to say. You're in a group, and the paladin says, "I want a holy avenger." It's like, wow, okay, that's great news for the GM, because like, okay, I know exactly what the GM wants, and he tells you that he wants it at level 1. So as a GM, what are you going to do about this? Because if you follow Robin laws, you should give him the Holy Avenger. But as a GM at the same time, do you think that giving the Paladin a Holy Avenger at level 1, where none of the other players have asked for anything similar, is fair to them? So I hope you're seeing my point. Catering to every want and needs of the players, willy-nilly, blindly, without any consideration, can be dangerous advice, in a sense that it may lead into directions that what the player wants, what the GM wants, may not be necessarily good for everyone else. So there's a cost of one thing. The way to go about this, at least I feel, is that identifying your wants and telling your wants is one thing, is one step. The next step is actually trying to compromise and trying to build consensus of, is it something that I can give you, whether as a player or whether as a GM, and if what I want is something that's going to be disruptive to the rest of the group. Is it something that's or is it something that's at the expense of other ones? And this is an example. Let's say you have a party of 5 players. 3 players are going to tell you that they want combat. 2 players are going to tell you that they want less combat. So as a GM, how are you going to handle this? Is it fair to give more combat because that's what the majority wants, but then at the same time that you're sidelining the 2 other players? So are you being a great GM right now because you gave more players what they wanted, but doesn't that make you a bad GM because you are doing the exact opposite of what 2 other players wants? And if you're a great GM, you should be able to do both. I hope you see the paradox and the irony of this. So having wants and knowing your wants is important, but I think another more important thing is being able to compromise on your wants, being able to talk with the group about your wants, and being able to find a good balance of wants that becomes a win-win for everybody. And this is something that I would probably try to be also important to note and also to emphasize. Take into consideration of what the GM wants as well. And because most often, at least in my experience as myself as a GM, when a player wants something and in a very specific way that the GM is either has not intended or is not aware of or hasn't planned ahead, then what the player wants is usually in contradiction to what the GM wants. And you may think that it's the job of the GM to be benevolent, to be generous, to not have any wants, but that would easily drain off any sort of motivation, any interest, any passion for the GM to run the game that the player wants. Obviously, there's some caveats and some exceptions that can be done if the game that the GM is running is based on the wants of the players. That's fine. But I think, and speaking for myself, not for anyone else, I have games that I want to run. I have games that I want to run in a certain way for various reasons. It could be exploration of themes and genre. It could be learning of a system. It could be application or execution of rules just to see how it works from a design perspective. It could be my attachment or my love for certain genres, and it becomes a very difficult dilemma at most times when I have to deal with player wants with my own wants, and it sometimes it boils down to a really difficult choice of, am I playing with the right players? Is what they want too much from what I want as a GM? And maybe this is something you can think about. This is something I certainly think about sometimes, even though I don't get much of the occasion to play. But when I tell my GM I want something, or what are my general wants, session 0 level, or whether it's during throughout the game, if the GM is open for feedbacks, and I express my wants, I always make sure that I always tell the GM that these are my wants, but you are not obliged to cater to everything that I want. In fact, I am actually much more comfortable discussing these wants. And if it's something that I want that you cannot have, that does not have a place in your game, let's compromise on that. I can take it away, or we can come to a middle ground, or maybe the GM is willing to sacrifice something just for the sake of my wants, and I should actually feel more grateful and appreciative for the GM's efforts. That to me makes a better GM than a GM who willingly gives me anything I want, or everything in this case. So I hope this video is gonna spark maybe some internal exploration of yourself. It certainly did when this word came out, and it certainly brought back some of my older memories of how I explored this through my own gaming life. First of all is identifying what you want. I would say in general, being as specific as possible is actually a good thing, but not being beholden to it, and allowing either yourself or the other people that you're playing with to be able to move around your wants, to know what are your deal breakers and what are your priorities, what are your wants and your don't wants, and being able to openly discuss this, fairly, happily, gladly, friendly, I think makes for a better game. It's probably the better advice that I would give both players and GM. I guess knowing what you want, and can you get what you want are the three real questions about wants for me in role-playing games. I guess that's pretty much all I have to say in general. I may go further on talking about topics of wants, because as I said, it's a very broad subject. It definitely has a lot of nuance, but I don't think it is something that's suited in a positive platform as RPGADay. So I guess I'll stop right here for RPGADay 2020, day number 10, want. So I'll see you in RPGADay day 11.